Well, I'm hoping this will be the last objective morality video for a little while. So I figure I'll try to summarize again. There was another video by Goat, and so I guess I'll start with that. His primary argument is that we don't have language to describe a morality, even if it existed. That somehow it is a limitation of words that is the problem, and it's not a limitation. All we have to do is qualify our definitions. He likes to say things like, is rape wrong, or something like that. And it really does make no sense if you're not going to define in the context of an equation what rape means. I mean, part of using language is to qualify your definitions, to qualify what you are saying when you use a word, what you mean by that word. And certainly when it comes to morality, you would always qualify a definition. You would say, violence against a woman, against her will, why she's conscious. I mean, you can add things, and a woman of consenting age, it doesn't even have to be a woman, a man, anybody, where you would commit this act of sexual trespass. So anyway, I'm just saying you can create a definition of the word that makes it useful and meaningful, and so you can make absolute statements as long as your definitions are precise, and I've argued that persistently. Another issue that comes up a lot is there's people not getting my distinction between the social contract ethics that we agree to and the idea of objective morality, or an absolute morality, and that there are two different things, because we can't know with certainty the absolute morality, the absolute truth regarding the impact, the meaning of a given action. We have to operate we have to function as a society with some sort of rules, and because we can't make those absolute definitions, we have to settle for a contract where we make certain agreements, certain concessions to each other's rights. And so, the social contract is very different from a definition of an absolute morality. And it's very different in terms of how you would impose something like an absolute morality. I don't know if you would ever necessarily impose it. It's just something to live up to as an ideal. It's something for a society to encourage, maybe even subsidize, maybe do everything it can to get people to move towards that direction, but it's not a morality in the sense of I don't think it can be, at least not in the near term, something that can be defined with the exactness required for there to be a right to impose it on others, because then all of us would have our own definition of it, and we'd be imposing it, and that's just not going to work. So anyway, but I think it is important for us to pursue the truth, and that's what objective morality would be about. And so to argue with the people who say there is no such thing, I have made the point that to say there's no objective morality is no different than to say there's no meaning in the universe. It is no different than to say it wouldn't matter whether there was 6 million holocausts that take place on planet Earth or just one. That those two worlds would be exactly the same in terms of their meaning. That there would be no desirability or preference or any reason, any logical cause to choose one over the other if one had the ability to play God and make that choice. And I think that on its face is preposterous. I don't think there's too many people out there who would discount the reality of suffering to the point where they would say it has no meaning. Because I think, of course, it does. I just don't think there's any way you can avoid that truth. And that's the foundation, that hole, that unaccounted for circumstantial fact of consciousness is the opening, is for an objective perception of value, an objective definition of value. And by objective, another word game that's being played, I don't mean, well, what I do mean is objective in terms of detached from personal interest. We obviously can't interpret anything but through our own subjective self, but we do have an intellect that is capable of reasoning relatively uninfluenced by personal desire, by the cruder parts of our brain, by our own self-interest. I've also made the argument that some emotion is part of how the logical process works in the human brain, that emotion is used to validate logic and to make it work. But it's not the same as the conditioned emotion or the inherent emotion built into us by natural selection. The emotion that makes us prejudiced towards, say, our parents or our kind or our kids, those kinds of emotional attachments are a corruption of logic, where the emotion one might feel about seeing or testing their own logic and finding it impervious to flaw, that's a very different kind of emotion. You're feeling gratified, that your brain creates a sense of gratification over the fact that the logic has integrity or value, or has met the challenge and has an integrity. And it's like I said, it's a very different kind of emotion, very different in how our brains are using it. It's not, there's no self-interest in that use of emotion. So anyway, I'll just deal with some comments that have been made. So like one guy said, why would I be obligated, question mark? I feel no such obligation. My highest obligation is to myself. You know, and so he goes on, it's basically anything, he feels no obligation. If he makes a contract with society, it's for his own interest. And I think that's just discounting the whole premise of whether or not we have a life that has impact on the rest of the world. And I think that's undeniable that we do, and that there would be a qualitative end result to that impact. We can take different courses in our life and produce different impacts on the world. We can create more or less suffering, and there's no way to deny that how productive or destructive we would be implicates the morality of our action, because we are choosing it. We are choosing the course. And so there is a morality, an ought, tied to what we do. So another one, I agree that he doesn't make a comment about his lack of joy. It is his mood, the tone of his voice, and his general outlook on life that betray it. I am simply saying that it is not a good idea to give advice while you feel miserable, and it is not a good idea to take advice from people who are miserable. I suppose I would agree, but the contrary is also true. I think a fair analysis would demonstrate that there's a lot more Pollyannas parading their silver linings and their bullshit than there are people preaching any kind of gloom. I guess I would further argue that, yeah, I mean, this is one of those arguments about, shooting the messenger or whatever, or killing the message because you don't like the messenger, and yeah, people have to accept that for what it is. I mean, I don't think you can look at reality fairly and honestly without getting a little depressed, because the reality is not a pleasant one. The truth is not, it just isn't that good, because the truth tends to indicate that we are trapped in a pretty broken system, where we are compelled by this innate need to chase. and we were like a dog chasing our tails, and there's nothing. It's entertaining for a few moments, but then you start to have some sympathy for this dog. And I would say that viewing the human race and the human condition, it's hard not to feel some sympathy for the trap we appear to be in, where we keep chasing this fulfillment, and we're doing it at a very high cost. There's a lot of friction, a lot of burnt energy, a lot of consumed human welfare. I'm going to run out of time, didn't get too far. So anyway, yep, I'll do some more of this, probably more comments in the next one, but hopefully it won't be for a week or so. So till next time on the subject of objective morality.